is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Welcome in, everybody. It's Sports Daily. It is a Monday with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor. Chad Chambers producing. It is the reaction Monday to the first week of the NFL preseason. Yes, we will do a little of that, especially with Kansas City Chiefs here. KU basketball gets a big-time recruit over the weekend. A few other stories around the world of sports that we'll get into today. Glad to be here with you. It's a giveaway day in our 2 weeks of saying goodbye to the summer, where we've just got all kinds of amazing prizes. We still have Blue Beetle tickets, the movie, sneak peek, coming up Thursday. You can get your chance to win an early look at that at Boulevard Theaters at Town West. That's coming up later, as well as Thomas Rhett at Intrust Bank Arena on Friday. We'll give away some tickets there. All kinds of good stuff. We'll give away some HTO, some Wind Surge vouchers as well. Welcome in. Happy Monday. You got a Garfield case of the Mondays, Tommy, or are we good this week?
We're good. It was a good weekend. Yesterday was a lot of fun. It's been a while since I've had a chance to just sit back, basically watch sports all day. I watched preseason football with the Chiefs, watched a little bit of the Raiders and 49ers, a little bit of golf, a little bit of baseball. It was a really great day, great weekend for sports, and looking forward to getting into it today.
Yeah, I am too. It was nice to get football back, and I don't know what it is. This is the time of the year where I start to get pretty antsy, though. Like you're ready for fantasy football to get started. You've got, you're trying to organize all your league drafts and get all that stuff ready, and you're just like, it is. You want football, and we're getting some football. And I don't know if it's this year versus others, but I do think there are more interesting storylines across the league to sort of pay attention to. I really am interested in so many young quarterbacks that the preseason seems interesting to me. I think the Chiefs have a lot of really interesting storylines to pay attention to. So maybe this won't be that same preseason where we're like, can we just get through this? Let's go. Maybe not. Maybe in like 4 days, we'll be feeling that exact same way. As training camps are about ready to end, by the way. It was a good. I'm loving just seeing football highlights, right? Like, it's just nice to have it back.
It is. And I found myself on yesterday watching the Chiefs game, wondering, am I going to overreact about the game? Am I going to put a lot of stock in what happened? And I really battled that, like, back and forth, because, it is just the preseason. But, there were some things I wanted to watch and some things I wanted to see. And was it overall a perfect watching experience? No, it wasn't. And there were a lot of things that I know we'll probably talk about here in a few minutes from that first preseason game. It wasn't all great, wasn't all good. Really trying to battle that urge to overreact right now.
Yeah, I don't think that the Chiefs game gave us much to react to in general. I think we saw some maybe philosophical things that could matter all the way through. The storyline is still Chris Jones. I appreciate, by the way, everybody tuning in this weekend on CBS Sports Radio, but I had Mick Schaefer, and Mick Schaefer covers the Chiefs for KSHB up in Kansas City. He's been around them. That's sort of their flagship, local affiliate up there right now. And he brought up a good point on Jones that, there's a part of this where this could now really ramp up, because maybe Chris Jones doesn't want to be a part of that grueling Andy Reid training camp. You know what I mean? So, like, the timing of it could be really like, oh, look, Chris Jones is back. And it just so happens right when the Chiefs return to their facility in Kansas City and don't have to be up there sweating it out in St. Joe. So I guess we could pay attention to that. That's just, up there, you're dissecting every little rumor that comes up, and something with Michael Bay, the movie director, happened on social media where they were messing with you. Like, I'm telling you, I think the same issues obviously are still in play. And I think what we laid out last week is still the most likely. at this point is that we just play this season out on the current deal. But he's not there. So we're watching that a little bit. That didn't go well. New Orleans absolutely shredded them through a couple of possessions early in that game. Now, again, I don't want to overreact because defenses aren't really showing anything right now. Like even more than the offenses, defenses aren't going to show you what they're going to do when things get started. But that was probably to me the most squeamish thing that we saw in the Chiefs preseason opener was how helpless the defense looked in those first two possessions.
Yeah, and it was really, honestly, if you want to even laser focus in on the very first possession, the Saints moved the ball with relative ease with Alvin Kamara, Derek Carr throwing some nice passes. And it was very, I think, easy. I mean, that's the right word to use. Easy for the Saints offense to move the ball down the field and get into the end zone. They converted on third down a couple of times on that drive. And again, the defenses, like they're in just in general in the NFL in preseason, they're not going to show you everything. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
I mean, they're not
But
gonna show
it
you
was
anything.
but it was very easy to tell that number 95 wasn't out there in the interior, right? I mean, like that,
Yeah.
even if they're not going to show you anything, you can still miss that presence for sure, even without showing your cards, showing your hand on exactly the way you're going to run your defense. And so I tweeted this after the Saints got into the end zone to go up 7-0. I said, you know, the Saints may have scored, but the real winner on that drive was Chris Jones. Because I'm sure that he sat back and watched that. And, you know, his agent probably sat back and watched that and said, all right, like maybe we have more leverage now and maybe not. And I don't think the Chiefs take a whole lot of stock into the very first, you know, opening defensive drive of the preseason. But at the same time, why not use that ammunition if you have it? You know, go back to the Chiefs and say, hey, look, I mean, it was pretty apparent that your defense missed having number 95 out there on that opening drive. Let's go back to the table and negotiate some more. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But that was pretty apparent to me in that opening drive.
You know, I don't think so because I think the reality still exists that the Chiefs in the back of their heads know Chris Jones is going to come play on this year's deal. So whatever that most urgent, like pressing thing, if they did see that and say, oh my God, I have to believe they still sit here and think he'll play this year anyway, and we can address it next year. Because I don't think he's not like going to sit out the whole year. And oh, by the way, I don't even want to compare it to Jonathan Taylor now. Jonathan Taylor's reportedly going to report to camp this week. Like at some point, guys can't just like not earn, right? That's not really an option for a lot of people. So Chris Jones will be there for this year. I just like in general terms, you don't like to see that. And, you know, it's mostly the same guys we saw from a year ago. We expect, I mean, don't you, Tommy? Like whatever capacity Chris Jones is out there, whether it's on a long-term deal or this year's deal, haven't we just generally considered and thought about the defense as probably either the same or just a little bit better than it was a year ago? But maybe we need to be more realistic than that and think, I mean, I suppose they could be worse defensively than they were a year ago. I mean, that possibility is certainly in the range of outcomes as the offense will almost certainly be better. You know, is the defense as good? And, you know, it's kind of the same personnel. So you assume so, but you know what they say about assumptions.
Well, yeah, and they did lose a couple of pieces defensively. We know that Frank Clark is gone. We know Juan Thornhill is gone. So, you know, they lost a couple of, you know, I don't want to say they're key pieces, but talented pieces.
And guys that knew that system well. I mean, I think
sure,
more
absolutely.
Than anything.
And you could tell early on defensively for Kansas City that, you know, their ultimate goal on the outside is George Karlaftis on one side and Felix Anudike-Uzomah on the other side. And while both of those players, I think, have relatively high ceilings, and we saw Karlaftis get after it last season for Kansas City, yeah, both of them still are mostly untested for the most part. You've got a rookie and you've got a second-year player, and both of those guys, you would assume from the way it looks, they're going to anchor the defensive ends positions for Kansas City this season. So, you know, it was good to see Anudike-Uzomah get some extended play out there. Karlaftis got a little bit of action too. And then I was also really interested to see what it would look like without Chris Jones, who was going to play in that position to start the game. Looked like Daniel Wise, the former Jayhawk, was getting some action there. Of course, Derek Nottie, and we don't talk about Derek Nottie a whole lot, because he is not a flashy player. He's not like Chris Jones, but he is a big presence, and he was extremely durable. He played, I think, in all 17 games for the Chiefs last season. So in the regular season. So, that was good to see him as well. But yeah, I mean, of course, it's early on. You just start to wonder exactly, and it's hard to tell from like the first couple of possessions when you actually saw the ones in there, how that's all going to play out.
The second game, and maybe even the third, as Andy Reid's changed it up the last couple of years since we lost a game, will be much more revealing to the offense, I think. But yeah, I mean, we just didn't get a whole lot right in there. I think we were all paying attention to the offensive line, and it is going to be Juwan Taylor on the right side. And I just don't know, they've invested a lot there. And again, I think if he's playing over there out of necessity because the other side has looked so good, that's probably okay, right? But if it's, if he's not playing well, then I don't know. It's just a lot of money to invest in that position, but it can be a good problem for a year. It's going to be a big problem after 1 year, but for a year, if he's over there, because that's where, their best lineup is, I guess it's not that big a deal. But that, again, will be one of the more interesting things we watch all year.
Yeah, I would be okay, honestly, if that's the offensive line configuration for this season. I mean, if they've got to have Juwan Taylor on the right side because Donovan Smith is playing out of his mind on the left side, I get that. I understand it. Yeah, they invested quite a bit of money in Juwan Taylor, but my hope would be that, throughout this season, in practices, next off season, they're continuing. And I think this is going to happen because they've invested so much money in Taylor. They continue to work with him to get him to a point to where he can then take over on the left side. If they didn't feel confident, we talked about this on Friday, if they didn't feel confident about his ability to eventually play left tackle, then I don't think they would have signed him for the money that they signed him for. I don't know if it was just a great sell job by Taylor and his camp.
They were planning on moving him to the left. I mean, we don't have to guess. They said it. They just didn't know Donovan Smith would be there at that time when they said it.
And I wonder right now, and of course things can change, is it more about the level that Donovan Smith is playing at on the left side, or do they have concerns about Juwan Taylor playing on the left side, or maybe a combination of both? It's still early on, but yeah, of course, when they, trotted out that offensive line to start the game and you saw Taylor on the right side and Smith on the left side, my thought was, I can accept this for now, as long as they're continuing to work on eventually making Taylor the starting left tackle because they've paid him so much money.
I mean, think about that line and what they have invested in it. It's crazy. With Tooney in the middle, they have the high draft capital and soon to be big contracts, you assume, for the other, for Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. And then you got Donovan Smith there. This has a chance to be one of the best lines in football. I mean, I think so. That it's not that any of this is a problem that you watched closely there. It's just very interesting to see how that plays out. And maybe it could be too, Tommy, that Donovan Smith just doesn't play right tackle well, right? And so it's like you're sort of, mixing and matching, playing to the strengths of the guys you have. The other thing I think as we watch and, on offense is, and this one probably stood out to everybody, I would guess, is Justin Ross with a couple of catches and a touchdown. Rashee Rice had 3 catches. We didn't see a lot of the starters. So Sky Moore, Travis Kelce, that group didn't do much of anything, but Ross and Rice had, they showed up, and that's good, especially Justin Ross, as we continue to just wonder, like, are the things we see in camp, like, is that going to translate and make its way through? Richie James also had a touchdown. We'll hear from Richie James in just a little bit in a conversation he had with Mitch Holthus. But I think that we saw a good showing out of the wide receiver group collectively, and that's what we want to see. And I don't know we were talking last night before we came on about, like, what pieces of this even matter. You watched far more of the game than I did, but I'm like, I still don't know what to make of this Justin Ross thing. Like, is this a real thing? Is this just still a nice story? Like, I still can't wrap my head around what that might be with Justin Ross.
I think that the only takeaway that I can make from Justin Ross from yesterday is that he made some nice catches and got into the end zone, but he didn't play it all on the field with Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes played the first possession and Ross wasn't on the field for the first possession at all. So I wonder, now that he's been able to take a little bit of a step forward, and I thought that Shane Buechele, I think, I don't want to say solidified his place as the third string quarterback on the team, but there were a couple of things that he did that I thought were really good, throughout that game. And I thought that Ross played off of him pretty decently. I wonder if in the next game, or maybe even in the third preseason game, if we see Justin Ross on the field with the ones. That if that happens, and we get to see him with Mahomes, man, like I wonder what kind of production we're looking at here, because as I watched him run routes yesterday, I mean, number one, he looks healthy. And number two, you still see flashes of why he took college football by storm at Clemson, right? And the reason why the Chiefs were so excited about bringing him on. And I think they felt like it was a little bit of a reclamation project. If they could get him healthy, if they could get him back to a point to where he could get on the field, then they feel like they've got something in him. And the fan base, myself included, I think we were getting a little antsy about, all right, you brought this guy in and he's been hyped up for a long time. And we saw what he did at Clemson. Now let's see how it translates onto the field. And, through one preseason game, again, you don't want to overreact, but I mean, he looked good.
Yeah. I don't know that there's much pressure there with him. I don't know how much it matters either with Mahomes, because they'll get their reps in practice. I just want to see if I think the big thing for him, Tommy, is like, does he make the roster? I mean, I think, and I think he will, but it's like that would at that point tell us it's real, because Kadarius Toney will be back at some point, and we know Sky Moore right now with Toney is the top option. And then I think, Ross and Rice fit in and probably, are the next two guys, and they do a lot of things at that position anyway. I just want to know, like, is this sustainable long term? Is he healthy? And what does that mean if he is? Like, what should we be looking for? If he was healthy after what we saw in college, Tommy, as he came out, he for sure would have been like a top 2-round talent, I think. That guy was incredible in college. And so I guess my biggest question is, is he ever that? Or is he just like a player in the NFL, which is totally fine and cool too? Or is there more from him to where, like, this guy's got a chance to be a consistent starter for this? That's what I'm trying to figure out. And it all starts with, does he just make the roster? And I think out of one game through the preseason, we probably have a pretty clear picture that, yes, he's going to make the roster. So then what's the next step after that? Can he be third on the depth chart? Can he be second on the depth chart if Kadarius Toney remains out? Like, that's where I think this thing goes to the next. But we'll hear from one of the receivers. Let's take a quick break, and let's start our giveaways today with some Win Surge vouchers. We'll give away a 4-pack to the Wichita Win Surge games. You can pick the date of your choice. That'll be courtesy of us here at Sports Daily and KFH. So as we get ready for that, we'll come back. We'll play some Richie James audio, a conversation he had with Mitch Holthus. We'll do all that. Good luck. First caller, get some Win Surge vouchers, 869-1240 on the IHOP hotline. We'll be right back. Albracht and Castor on Monday of Sports Daily. right, so with Mahomes, Tommy, Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Sky Moore were the perceived starters there. Watson and Rice got a few snaps in with Mahomes as well. And then Justin Ross and Richie James came in after Mahomes left. I think they're going to keep all 6 of these guys. And in fact, with Kadarius Toney being the 7th, I think they're going to keep all 7 of these guys. I think they're going to carry 7 wide receivers.
I think they are too. In fact, I think that there is an argument that can be made. They're not going to do it, but I think there's an argument that could be made that you could carry 8 receivers on your roster. Nico Remigo looked great towards the end of the game. I mean, I know that's garbage time in preseason or whatever. And I think he's going to be a prime practice squad candidate.
Could be.
And probably somebody that other teams are going to take a look at because I thought he was very impressive. They're not going to carry him on the active roster. But man, I really enjoyed watching him play too.
Yeah, that was cool. You got a Belldozer moment. Didn't work out for him, but that was kind of cool too. Blake Bell, shout out. Bishop Carroll grad, former OU star. I think they're going to keep all of them. I think Richie James would be the candidate if Justin Ross is healthy to not. But I really would like to see James make the roster because he could be real handy if something goes poorly. Congratulations, by the way, to Darren for winning those Win Surge tickets. We'll have more giveaways as we make our way through. But yeah, Richie James is an interesting player. I liked when they got him quite a bit. Now, he may get pushed down the roster, but again, he just seems like a nice little safety net when they have so many high ceiling question mark kind of guys. He was had a conversation with Mitch Holthus as a part of training camp. We're getting that audio sent to us exclusively over to Steve and Ted. Let's play a little audio. Jad has some from that conversation between Mitch and Richie James.
I mean, everything. First of all, just another opportunity to play another year in the league, especially one of the best teams that, obviously just won a Super Bowl last year. So that's the goal, just to go back to another one. Players, the guys around me, and learning their personalities and just trying to be a good teammate at the end of the day.
Final question, to be the number 1 punt returner and to be that for this team, what would that mean for you and this team?
Punt returner, kick returner, receiver, whatever my job, calls me to be. So the goal is just to contribute in a positive way and, like I said, be a good teammate at the end of the day.
I mean, that's it, isn't it, Tommy? You'd like to have him even if he's just a punt returner because you do not want Sky Moore to have to do that again, and you don't want Kadarius Toney, as explosive he is, to do it because it enhances his injury risk. That's what I mean. Special teams. Oh no, someone goes down. You don't lose much with Richie James. I'm not 100% sure, Tommy, that I don't have more confidence in Richie James than I do Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think MVS has a very defined and important role in what he'll do for the offense, but just as far as well-rounded, I'm not sure I don't like Richie James more. I mean, I don't think that's crazy.
Yeah, if you look at that unofficial depth chart that came out towards the end of last week and you look at punt return and kick return, right now they've got Richie James as the starting punt returner and they've got Deneric Prince as the starting kick returner, but Richie James is second on that list. The other guys that are behind James on both punt return and kick return on that unofficial depth chart are guys that more than likely are not going to make the active roster. So knowing that, I mean, I think that he's pretty much got those roles solidified, at least to start as the punt returner and, maybe get in there on kick returns too, when needed. And then, if you can slot in as the 4th or 5th option at wide receiver, then, make a little bit of a contribution here and there. It's pretty apparent that as of right now, as things stand, Andy Reid is comfortable with Sky Moore and MVS as the starting wide receivers, but just because it is that way right now doesn't mean that's what we'll see when the season begins. And I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see maybe somebody like Rashee Rice or maybe even Justin Ross, depending on how he's playing in the preseason, get up there and, be able to maybe bump out MVS from the starting rotation. That wouldn't surprise me if something like that were to happen.
I think as we see it, if week 1 everybody's healthy, it's going to be MVS, Sky Moore, and Kadarius Toney. And MVS in that world as a deep threat matters to the offense, right? Because you already have those other 3 racing across the field with Kelsey. It would be nice to have a defense honest and take the top off of it And like over his career, MVS has a ton of experience doing that. That's pretty much what he was in Green Bay. It's kind of what he's morphing into, I think, here. And I think it does make the offense better. So, it'll be fine. It will be fine. I think, again, it is a position of strength. I think it's versatile. I think they'll carry, and they don't carry a fullback anymore, remember? So I think they have room to do it. But the receiver position, to me, is so much better now than it was a year ago. And that should be terrifying to the rest of the NFL. I think Patrick Mahomes, with the line that he's going to have this year, Tommy, and the group of weapons he has at wide receiver and the versatility they have and the way that they've changed their offense, I think this could be a monster year for Mahomes. And, as we watch the other quarterbacks, I did actually watch and think, Tommy, like, okay, you don't have your backup, which has been, honestly, it's been pretty important to the Chiefs over the last couple of years. Blaine Gabbert looked fine. I think he steps in fine, and I think Bouchel is the long-term backup. I think they'll carry 3. And I'm glad Gabbert's there in, a moment's notice if they had to have something. And, Bouchel continues to show us, like, yeah, that value, that backup position long-term looks to be okay as they keep filling the gaps with these seasoned vets that are like, yeah, I'll go play for the Chiefs. You kidding me?
Yeah. I remember a couple of years ago, before they had Chad Henne on the roster and Matt Moore was the backup. And I think it was that season that Mahomes had the dislocated kneecap and Matt Moore came in. And I mean, it worked okay, I guess, but you didn't really feel super confident in Matt Moore. And everybody really, I mean, clearly, obviously wanted Mahomes to rush back and play. You felt a little bit more confident with Chad Henne in there. Clearly you want Mahomes, but Henne led a massive touchdown drive to get the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. And so that's important, right? And having somebody like Blaine Gabbert, who of course didn't work out as a starting quarterback in the NFL, but by the way, has spent the last 3 or 4 seasons under Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. So he knows what that's like to play backup behind a future Hall of Famer. And so that's the role that he comes in and he'll serve in that role. I thought he looked fine. And I feel like you can have some confidence if the unthinkable happens and something happens with Mahomes. At least, you've got somebody who's capable like Blaine Gabbert, to be the backup.
Yeah, it's good to see. That stuff matters. We've seen it in critical moments. The Chiefs, several times during this little run that they're on, have needed the backup quarterback to be really nice players. I think that's about it from the Chiefs' takeaways on this thing, Tommy. Anything else stand out to you? I mean, I didn't expect much to matter in this game. I don't think much did matter. I think we were correct early that the bad play of the defense seemingly was the most standout thing of it. But that's pretty much it for me in the game. You get into the second half, I'm not paying much attention or like any to what's going on out there. But it's fine. We're through the first game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you can point a little bit at the way the offense played that very first drive. That wasn't very good either. Of course, it's one drive. It's one possession, right? With the ones out there, they didn't look sharp. They looked a little sloppy. Mahomes only dropped back, I think, 3 times, threw for 15 yards, whatever. It's a preseason game. But one other thing offensively that I thought was good to see, Clyde Edwards-Helaire got some run, and he got in there early and he was able to make a few things happen. I don't know where he slots in the depth chart.
Good point.
We haven't talked about the running back room, but he was pretty involved, and I think that he was more involved than I would have thought he was going to be. So I think that's something that bears watching as we move forward, in the preseason and kind of see what role he'll have.
I've been telling you for 2 months, I thought they needed a body there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire could, take that away. Like if Clyde Edwards-Helaire has a nice showing here, he can be the extra body I think that they need. Yeah. I think that they got to have somebody, because I think there is almost zero chance Isaiah Pacheco makes it through this season without missing time in games because of the way that he runs. That's not Jerick McKinnon. Like, that's not what he does, right? So it could be Clyde. Like, in a moment, if you need a different start, like, it could be. Like, he's shown very small flashes of that in his past. But look, this guy came in with a high pedigree. That could be what happens there. I still think, though, that we need to see, whether it's him or somebody else, depth at that position because they're going to need it, I think, this year. Okay, so Darren wins our Win Surge tickets. Let's go now to some HTO here. So, Tommy, it's a double drips day. You were laughing at me one time. You go in and you're like, why didn't you tell me you have rewards? And I'm like, how did you not know we have rewards? So if you have the app, the HTO app, you get double rewards points today. So if you don't have it and you go in there, get the rewards. Come on now. All it does is give you free stuff. So do that. It's a double drips day, though. These are always busy days at the store because everyone gets those extra rewards points. We'll give you a couple of free iced teas on us. Those will be good for HTO Wichita West, HTO Wichita East, 13th and Tyler West, 21st and 127th East coming soon in Derby. But get yourself some iced tea on us. Maybe you're headed back to school. Maybe you want to send one of your favorite teachers a tea as they get headed back to school. You can give them one of those cards too. Let's do the first caller during the break on the IHOP hotline for that, 869-1240. Jad will get us a winner. We'll come back. We'll take a look around the rest of the NFL week 1 in the preseason. That's next on Sports Daily.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going in the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, enjoy that tea, Gary. Winner of some HTO iced tea today. So we got Gary and Darren winners. We still have movie tickets. We still have Thomas Rhett tickets to give away here on the program today. Glad to be here today on the show as we look around the rest of the NFL preseason. It's to me, it's all about the young quarterbacks. When I look at the preseason and why I've been relatively interesting. I mean, you look at a quarterback, Derek Carr looked great for New Orleans in that Chiefs game. We didn't talk about anything they did. So did Alvin Kamara. The Saints are an interesting team and a team a lot of people like as, a bet to make this year. Let's look elsewhere. I think that the big winner that jumped off the screen to everybody is Justin Fields. Now they broke off a couple of big plays in that. But the Bears are a really interesting team this year. I think that whole division is interesting. I talked about this weekend on CBS Sports Radio. I think there is a chance that every single team in the NFC North got better and will be better. Now, does that mean that I think the Vikings are going to win more games than they did last year and that just wacky or no? But I do think there's a world where they're a better team. I think the Bears will certainly be better. I think the Lions got a little better. And look, the Packers, it went sideways on them so much last year that, yeah, I think they could be better. So I think everybody in the NFC North could be better, but Fields stands out, obviously, as he does to everybody else. Was he the biggest week one NFL preseason winner to you, Tommy?
I think so. Honestly, I mean, I was trying to think who else it could be. And there were some other guys that I felt like, got some good run in the week one of the preseason. But really, I think as far as a player that has had expectations to deliver on his shoulders for a team that has desperately needed it, yeah, it was probably Justin Fields. I mean, obviously, as we talked about, there's a couple of weeks left in the preseason, and we'll see if he can back it up. But in my mind, I think you've got to, if you're a Bears fan, at least take a little bit of a sigh of relief after seeing the way Fields played in week one.
Yes. And look, what's crazy is of all the rookies, none of them looked great. Levis didn't look that good. Richardson didn't look that good. Stroud didn't look that good.
Honestly, probably the best rookie quarterback was Stetson Bennett. I mean, honestly, he looked, I think, pretty solid for the Rams. He was probably the guy that, I don't know, out of all the rookies, probably looked the best. And I think is going to solidify at least his place as the backup to Matt Stafford.
Yeah, look, he's an interesting player. I mean, there's like a Brock Purdy feel to that. Did Hendon Hooker get in the Lions game? I forgot to look for Hendon Hooker. That's a guy that, people think he's older, but people think have a chance to be the best quarterback out of the class. I've heard a lot of people play it. No, he didn't. But he did play for the Lions. I did see this. Adrian Martinez. I didn't even know Adrian Martinez played for the Lions, Tommy. Like, I missed that one. I didn't. I was looking through just to, I scour the, box scores and look around and say, I was like, Martinez, is that Adrian Martinez? When did Adrian Martinez get to the Lions? How did I miss that? I totally missed it. I didn't realize that had happened. So good for him.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either. And I don't know if he's, a guy that's battling for the third string for the Lions.
They only played two quarterbacks in the game, and he was one of them.
Because clearly Jared Goff is the starter there. Nate Sudfeld, I think, is the backup, and then
Hooker's there,
too. So I would think that Martinez is battling for a roster spot at this point, maybe with Sudfeld. I don't know if they've penciled in Hooker as the number 2. I mean, man, like wouldn't that be something if he's able to make that roster?
Well, I'll tell you why that matters is because it continues the streak for Chris Kleiman on NFL quarterbacks and to some degree Colin Klein. Like, nobody thought Adrian Martinez was going to be an NFL quarterback when he was at Nebraska, comes to K-State, even as he was injured most of the year, obviously gets the work in. I'm telling you, I've been saying this for a while. K-State is going to turn into a quarterback U as long as Kleiman's there. He just does it. And Klein will enhance that for as long as he's there. but it's going to become, and you just watch when we see, these guys now with Will Howard this year, who I think is going to skyrocket through this thing, and then ultimately Avery Johnson, they're going to continue to churn guys out, and it is going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to K-State, because if they can get great quarterbacks to come there, I mean, it enhances their chances, obviously, so much to be able to do that. It's coming. Adrian Martinez is in the NFL.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Would there
Speaking
be
of K-State, the other big storyline is,
I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
ask really quick, would there be another, I'm trying to think, another Big 12 school that, if this continues to develop, that can compete with K-State as far as quarterbacks are concerned? Because I don't think that there is. And I think that they've got the opportunity to be the top school in the conference as far as quarterbacks are concerned.
for sure. And the Big 12 has a history of, especially when Oklahoma leaves, because if you take Oklahoma out of the equation, it has not been a good quarterback league necessarily. Not that there isn't a good quarterback league, by the way. It's turned into the SEC. It used to be the Big 12. It's turned into the SEC, but Oklahoma always sends them in. Of course, you got Brock Purdy mixing it up there now from Iowa State too. But, oh yeah, K-State. Note what team across college football, Tommy, outside of Alabama. So we'll take Alabama and now K-State. When you look at the quarterbacks connected to that K-State head coach, like outside of Nick Saban, is there a better one right now? And I may be forgetting about somebody that's absolutely on the table, but
I mean, maybe Ryan Day in Ohio State. I think you could maybe make an argument that they're up there. Brian Kelly, maybe, but I mean, it's a very short list.
Brian Kelly, who's Brian Kelly got in the NFL? Like, I don't.
Well, that's true.
I think that because it was like, it's always been this game of like trying to find, like, after USC, when they had a nice little run of quarterbacks, right, for a while. And it was like, where everyone would dog on teams or schools or leagues. And it was like, guys, nobody's consistently sending quarterbacks to the NFL. Like, it doesn't happen. At that point, Alabama wasn't. Now Alabama's got a nice run going here. They're on a hot streak with quarterbacks. But so is Chris Kleiman, and now at K-State. But if you go back further with him, he's been connected now to guys all over the place. And this is going to get really interesting. Speaking of K-State, did you see Deuce Vaughn?
I did.
Justin Fields might have been the big winner as far as like national, but for us here to watch Deuce Vaughn do that, like Deuce Vaughn's going to turn into our Fred VanVleet. Like, we're all going to just like scream from the like Deuce Vaughn around here as we watch him in the NFL, as he's spent the entire training camp with people poking fun at how small he looks at Cowboys camp. Now, the Cowboys beats are like, holy smokes, this guy's got some juice. But as they tweet things, everybody else is like, it looks like he's a little kid out there in his dad's football uniform. But I'm like, man, let's see. And then he gets into that game when you see it, and I'm just like, beat my chest for Deuce Vaughn. Like, shut up, everybody. He's going to be great. And I love that he plays for the Cowboys. And it was more than just a sweet little story about him and his dad. Like, this dude's going to make it.
If he can back it up, the week one preseason performance with a couple more solid performances in the preseason, man, I don't know. I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong here, because I know you're a Cowboys fan. I don't know if they need to reunite with Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, they've got Tony Pollard and then Deuce Vaughn, right? Like, I don't think that they necessarily need to go and do that if Vaughn can show that he can be a viable back.
They probably still do, because I think that in a perfect world, look, one thing I'll say about Deuce Vaughn's size, he's not going to be a 20 carry a down. Like, that's not going to be what he does. And by the way, I don't think that's what Tony Pollard is either. I know that they're putting a lot on his shoulders, but I think both of those guys being out there, I mean, they have CeeDee Lamb and they brought in Brandon Cooks. Okay, on Cooks, maybe we'll see. There is a very real possibility that, two of the three most impactful and talented offensive players on that team are Tony Pollard and Deuce Vaughn. So I think they absolutely have room for him one way or the other. Their problem with depth and bringing back Zeke is if Pollard goes down, they're in big trouble. And Pollard's never had the kind of load they're wanting to put on him. And by the way, got hurt at the end of the year last year. But I don't want to put it past him, but I don't think they're seeing Deuce Vaughn as like, all right, Pollard went down, let's bring him in for 20 touches in this game. I mean, that'd be good for him, But in the NFL, we know this. The NFL becomes so much about like, how do you stay on the field? And that's why people have concern about Deuce Vaughn. They're like, he's going to get killed out there. And they're saying too, like, we get it. He's Darren Sproles light, but he's lighter than Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles was thick, right? Deuce Vaughn's he's not bulky and short. He's a smaller guy, but the dude is incredible. And I love it. I'm here for all of it. The watch it, because man, he's going to become one of the most popular players in football if this works out. Jerry Jones, I can guarantee you Jerry Jones loves him and loves the idea of him if he's good. Oh, Jerry Jones is going to take that to the stinking moon, man. Like he's gonna market the crap out of Deuce Vaughn. It'll be awesome to see. As by the way, if you missed the news, what was that last week where we came out with it officially? We are now the flagship station of K-State Athletics. So we're excited about that to see this. K-State football on the up and up. All right, let's come back. Hour number 2. We'll bounce around a little bit in the second hour. We will get you to the more of the NFL preseason. We'll also get you to this KU recruiting story that was not on my radar, and I think that's what makes the story interesting. I don't think it was on anybody's radar. They landed a big recruit that when Tommy told me we got to talk about this, I thought it was a totally different player. I wasn't aware of this guy. So we'll talk about that when we return. On the way out, Jad, let's do Thomas Rhett at Intrust Bank Arena. Thomas Rhett tickets Friday. We'll give you a pair of tickets. Here we go. It'll be a 7:30 show. Should be a lot of fun. Big time country music star Thomas Rhett. Second caller to the IHOP hotline during this break. We'll go to Intrust Bank Arena and see Thomas Rhett on us. We'll be right back with more Sports Daily right after this. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hour number 2 here on a Monday, Sports Daily. Glad to be here with you. Tommy and I here, we've been bouncing around the NFL training camp. A couple more storylines we might get to throughout the rest of the show. We're going to switch it up a little bit here and go through and look at a story that, this was not on my radar. So college basketball recruiting is always happening, right? And I know there's like a kid that's going to graduate early and become the top recruit next year. And so I've been, I had that on the mind. But when Tommy said that KU landed somebody this weekend, I was like, man, it's too early for that. And I guess they snuck in and got the nation's top center, Tommy. This wasn't on my radar at all. At all. And I don't think it was anybody else. Kansas, I don't believe, was considered one of the favorites here. But, center U, as Kansas is, gets the top 2024, one of the top 2024 recruits.
Yeah, Flory Badunga has committed to KU. Did that over the weekend. And I think the reason why it kind of flew under the radar and nobody's really talking about it was because he was, I think, all but signed to go to Auburn. Auburn was the favorite to land him. And then in the last minute, I don't know exactly what Kansas did or, if it was NIL related or, really what came down, but, he chose to go to the Jayhawks. Chose them over Auburn, Duke, and Michigan. Those were the final 4. He's the number 1 ranked center in the nation in the class of 2024. And what I find remarkable about this is that you mentioned center U from Kansas, right? But it wasn't that long ago that the Jayhawks didn't have a true center on their roster. And now they've got the top transfer in the country for this season in Hunter Dickinson, and then Badunga coming in the season after. So, I don't know exactly what this means. Like if Dickinson, if they're feeling like he's going to be a 1 year and done, I know he's got 2 years of eligibility left. I don't exactly know how that's going to play. But man, after a year where they didn't really have a true big man, now they've got the top transfer and then the top rated recruit coming in for the year after.
I don't think that, I don't think that this or any, young center is going to come in and be a one and done type player, most likely. So I'm not sure the Dickinson piece of it worries me much at all, right? Like he'll be able to play some, but outside of Embiid, right, there aren't a lot of guys that have been able to do that well. KU's maybe had a couple of guys who've tried it, but it doesn't generally work out very well. They're far better when guys stick around at that position for just a little bit, get big, learn how to play it. KU will play it more traditionally. So it's curious. I really don't know anything about him because he has not been on my radar for schools that we care about at all. And I'm not, if they don't have an interest in coming to a school we care about, I don't pay just a whole lot of attention on the recruiting trail, especially on August 14th. But that was really interesting to sneak in there. And it shows too, Tommy, Bill Self still got it, right? Like he's at the top of the game here. And even as, the playing field has leveled to the blue bloods, I think all across the country in all sports because of NIL and everything, Kansas is still showing the ability to get in there and, mix it up and do what they need to do to stay on top.
Yeah, Badunga is 6'9", so he's a couple of inches shorter than I think, maybe the best centers are, but he backs that up with big time shot blocking ability. He's got a lot of length. He's able to run the floor. He's got a lot of energy, a great motor, which is really good. And by the way, you're talking about how big of a recruit he is. He's the highest rated recruit that Kansas has signed since Josh Jackson back in 2016. So it's been a while. And, we know the Jayhawks consistently get, recruits that are highly ranked and highly rated, really well thought of. But as far as it's been a while since they've got somebody that high in the actual top 100 rankings. He's at number 4 overall and number 1 as a center. He also said that when he talked to Bill Self, that Self told him that he thinks he could be the next Joel Embiid, which, I don't know if that tells you anything about the game that they think this guy possesses. So,
well, listen, I think Bill Self tells every center he recruits that
sure,
they could be the next Joel Embiid. I don't.
Sure.
I think that's a little. I wouldn't want to put that sort of expectation on this kid to come in and do that right away. But it is interesting. Look, and we can shift into a more general conversation here. It's always an interesting place to go, Tommy, when talking to people around the country about how I think all these changes in college sports are good, but I think all these changes in college sports are good. A big part of that is NIL. A big part of that is, leveling the playing field. And I think the playing field will get leveled against Kansas a little bit. And I think we're seeing that to your point you just made. Kansas doesn't always get the top guy anymore, as they did for a while, right? They were on a stretch there and on a run where they were always getting some of the top 5 players in the country. So as we see other schools now become in play for those caliber of players, which they absolutely are because of NIL, it's interesting to see Bill Self and KU pivot a little bit. And, through the transfer portal, they've been able to go and lock down and land the, generally speaking, top transfer guys the last few years. And they still go out and do the high school recruiting. They can mix it up and get one of these. I think this speaks to just, look, who knows how this stuff happens, but if you're a sender in high school, KU needs to be at or near the top of your list. And that could have been as simple as that. Maybe KU got something put together that was good for this kid. But it is one of the things I've always said makes Bill Self the top guy for me is he's always been able to do it in a variety of ways. Like John Calipari kind of only has one way to do it, right? Go get the absolute blue chips and see what sticks. The absolute top guys. Same thing for Duke, right? Duke was a little more in line with what KU does. But what Bill Self's always done, yeah, he might mix those guys in. He probably has a star freshman every year. Grady Dick last year. But he also has 3 to 4 critical pieces that have been there for 4 years or 3 years, or at least starters for that long. And I've always said nobody combines the recruiting and the coaching better than Bill Self. There may be other people that have recruited at a higher level consistently. Okay. There may be people who have coached at a higher level, although I would question that and say he's right there with anybody. But the combination of it, when you bring in total package aspect, he's always been at the top of the list for me. And I think we're seeing him adapt and, be versatile. And we had the health scare, and thankfully we're through all that now. And they do it again. They go get some big transfers. They hit the high school recruiting trail, obviously very hard, and they bring back two insanely, experienced players this year, just like they do every year. Actually, three now, if you think about McCullough that way. Okay, like here we go again. Just Bill Self reaffirming where he stands in the world of college basketball.
It is incredibly impressive, the number of blue chip recruits that Bill Self has landed over the years. I mean, think of Josh Jackson and Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid. And, now you've got Flory Badunga up there. But I've always thought that what's been more impressive, and you touched on it briefly, guys that not only have been there long term, but also guys that Bill Self has brought in who have not been highly recruited, and he's turned into stars. Look at Ochai Agbaji. Ochai Agbaji wasn't on anybody's radar out of high school, like hardly at all. And he comes into Kansas and he's there year after year after year, improving year after year after year. And he becomes just an absolute superstar his final year at Kansas. Jalen Wilson, of course, he was recruited to Michigan, but transfers out or decommits from Michigan, goes to KU, and he has improved his game over and over and over again. I mean, the list is endless of these guys. And I find it remarkable that it's not only just going out and getting the blue chippers, but it's also developing the guys. Devontae Graham and Frank Mason, they weren't on a lot of people's radar. I think Devontae Graham had an offer at Appalachian State. Like, I think that was basically it, and look at what he was able to do. So it's not just the blue chippers, it's developing these 3 and 4 year players. Kevin McCullough is coming back now for a second season because he wants to develop even more under Bill Self.
I mean, it's awesome to see. I love it. Never gets old. I'm such a big fan of Self's style and versatility. Let's continue this just into a general college sports. We've been following realignment a lot. It's been quiet for like 3 days. It's a long time in what we've seen. And, the big story that we haven't talked about yet that sort of happened is either late Friday or early Saturday is that there are some teams in the ACC putting the kibosh on any rumor of adding Cal and Stanford. And it's an interesting group of teams because I think it's for the teams that are looking for a way out of the ACC as soon as they get it, Tommy. Florida State, North Carolina, NC State, and Clemson. And so we've got this sort of standoff right now happening for these lame duck schools. Now, I don't know. Dennis Dodd told me Saturday that Florida State's not good enough for the SEC, basically. And I agree with that. Now, maybe they are for the Big Ten, but it just makes you wonder, like, if you're the ACC and you're trying to figure this out, how do you proceed here knowing, and I think what you're seeing from like Notre Dame, by the way, is the honesty of the situation that we've been talking about. If you're the ACC right now, you have to just consider like these schools are going to be gone because if they get the chance, they're telling us out loud right now that they will leave. So, okay. Who's got a real chance to do that? Let's just have these discussions internally. All right, these are the schools. What do we look like after the fact, and how do we react to that? I think that's why you're seeing the interest in Cal and Stanford, which if you think that USC and UCLA didn't make geographic sense for the Big Ten, Cal and Stanford make absolutely no sense for the ACC. That is going to be a scheduling nightmare if you just have two random schools out there and you're going coast to coast every time that you have to play. And honestly, corner to corner. Like Miami to Stanford, but the fact that they're considering it to me tells me that the ACC is beginning to think about this situation in a realistic aspect, right? Like we know how this is going to go. The Big 12 tried for years and years to make it better, and they were quick to react when it happened. I think they were prepared. The Pac-12 clearly was not prepared when it initially got poached. I think we're seeing little signs, Tommy, of the ACC, or at least factions within it, that say, guys, we got to be prepared because it's coming.
Yeah, those schools that it sounds like are against that expansion to the West Coast. I mean, I know that, Florida State was listed as one of them, NC State, North Carolina. I wonder, we've talked a lot about Clemson. We've talked a lot about Florida State. We haven't talked a lot about North Carolina or NC State.
I think North Carolina is the most attractive school in the ACC. Can I just say that? Maybe
Really?
maybe not Clemson, but close if not.
See, I'd put Clemson, and honestly, I think Florida State's up there too. I mean, I think they're overvaluing themselves a little bit, but I think they do have a significant amount of value. I'd probably go, I
Would
don't
you
know,
take
Clemson
Florida State over
1.
Miami? I'd take Miami over Florida State.
Would you really? See, I don't know if
Oh,
I
yeah.
would. I mean, I don't know. I think that there is value for sure from North Carolina. I just don't know what kind of end game they want to get to. Like, do they want to end up in the Big Ten? They're not going to go to the SEC. Like, that's not the fit for them. Is it the Big Ten? And if so, that's the only reason that I would
it's the
think
Big
that
Ten.
they would be. Say that again.
I think the Big Ten makes more sense for Florida State.
Well, I'm talking about North Carolina. I mean, North Carolina's not
North
going
Carolina
to the SEC.
makes sense
Like,
to
they're
the SEC.
the Big
I
Ten.
think the SEC.
I don't think they
get
make
Florida.
sense for the SEC for North
The
Carolina.
SEC, what school does the SEC have in North Carolina right now?
I mean, good point, but I think that their profile overall fits the Big Ten a little bit better. But I mean, I don't know. Like, if they are anti Stanford and Cal, they don't want to bring them in, then I wonder if there have been conversations with North Carolina with either one of these two conferences about leaving and coming over. So, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of as to why they would vote against Stanford and Cal if they feel like they've got an out and they're leaving sometime soon.
So here's why I think North Carolina would be a great SEC fit. One, they don't have anybody there. Tommy, North Carolina's got the 9th most people in our country. Like, that North Carolina's got big cities, a lot of people, great fan base. I think a program that could easily take a next step in the SEC. I think North Carolina profiles well there. I just don't know, like Tallahassee, like what would, here's, I guess, what I would look at for Florida State. Like, what do they bring to the SEC that the SEC doesn't already have, right? If you're trying to enhance your league and your product and your marketability and your price tag and all that stuff, like, what does Florida State bring outside of a rivalry with Florida? Like, what does Florida State bring them that they don't already have? I think that's how we have to think about the SEC. Notre Dame, clearly, the SEC would be interested in. But I think you have to, when you're talking about that league that's already the top league, no matter what the Big Ten does, I think you have to think about, like, what makes them better. And I just don't know if Florida State makes them better. Clemson does, right? Even though they're already in South Carolina, Clemson makes them better because Clemson's been a premier program now for enough years. I think North Carolina does because where it is. I don't think Florida State does. We're a long way away from Bobby Bowden and Deion Sanders.
But I mean, I think that if you are, expanding the footprint geographically, it absolutely fits. I mean, knowing where the other SEC schools are.
I don't think the SEC cares as much about geography as getting what they don't already have. I don't think they're going to go west. I don't think they need to. And I think they also understand that there's not the interest west like there is where they are located. But Florida State's got to have somebody interested because I don't think they'd be making this much noise and rattling this many sabers if they didn't. I think it's more likely to be the Big Ten. Don't sleep on it being the Big 12, by the way. Now, if it was the Big 12, I don't think the exit fee would make as much sense right now. But that's where the ACC's got to be careful here because I feel like this could go one of two ways. You either work with the Big 12 somehow, or you're going to get heavily poached. Because if the league starts to get poached, Tommy, I think the Big 12 will try to poach. I think right now, if you're Brett Yormark, you absolutely have interest in some sort of merger with the ACC, right? Whatever that looks like, it would benefit all parties. And they have the same TV partners to some degree. So you might even be able to get those TV partners back to the table, or maybe they'll go back to the table when the Big 12 deal comes up. You know what I mean? Like it makes some sense in that regard too, that ESPN is so married to both of those leagues. But, if the ACC begins to get poached, like let's say it's Clemson, North Carolina, maybe North Carolina State that the SEC has interest in. And, the Big Ten then swoops in and maybe Miami's in the mix there in Virginia. And because I think Virginia is really interesting too. And North Carolina. And it's like, okay, now we've lost. Now at that point, if I'm the Big 12, I come in hard after schools like Louisville and Pitt and, all these things that Like that's what the ACC's got to watch out for here. And it's basically exactly what happened to the Pac-12. So I don't think the ACC as a league can just sit by and say our grant of rights deal is going to protect us. That's the general thought right now, and maybe it can, because nobody can figure out how they can break it except this private equity thing for Florida State. But nobody, generally speaking, can figure out how they're going to get out of that thing. But I don't think you're doing the right thing by just saying, well, this thing's pretty solid. We can just sit by and just, I think that's too dangerous. At some point, you'll have your Colorado. You'll have that Franz Ferdinand moment where some small thing happens and it just erupts, right? That's where I think you got to be careful if you're the ACC, because if Florida State can figure out a way to get out, the other schools are going to follow whatever that model is, and then chaos will ensue. If you're the ACC right now, though, and again, this is why Notre Dame, I think, is making noise. I think it's more than just they like Cal and Stanford because they're rivals of theirs. I think right now is the time that you start having conversations with the Big 12 to say, let's compete with those other two leagues. I think we can do it. I think our powers combined, we can get pretty close to the Big 10 in the SEC. And Brett Yormark, you're the TV whiz. I think you can convince the executives that we can do that through basketball and through some other things. How do we do that? How do we come together, put egos aside, not worry about what's going to happen to the commissioner of one league or the other, and just say, how do we do this? Because it could be the final step to solidifying this thing. You have 3 power conferences, basically, and whatever the remainder sits out west is still a good league, and I think we'd be okay. But if they don't, and they just let themselves get poached like everybody else, they're going to be a far cry from themselves, because if the ACC gets poached by the SEC and the Big 10, Tommy, I think it's going to get poached by the Big 12 too.
I think so too. I think it could be poached by the American. I mean, the American is on record saying that they want to expand and they want to be aggressive in all of this. If the ACC falters, the American's not going to be able to go in and, be aggressive to a point to take any of these ACC schools first. But if the Big 12 does, if the Big 10 does, whatever conference kind of starts the domino effect, eventually the American's going to jump in there and at least try to have conversations with some of these ACC schools. Will they be successful? I don't know. I mean, I think Louisville is a fit. I think Pitt is a fit. There's a couple of others that if the American wants to go hard, like the American could land a couple of
problem for the American is they're never going to get a TV deal that's better than what those teams have through like 2036. But the Big 12,
I'm just saying if the ACC completely falls apart and they're not talking merger and other schools are leaving and finding ways out, and you're left with, kind of a Pac-12 situation where you've got just the remnants of the conference hanging out, then yeah, at that point, I think the American can absolutely swoop in.
But the they got 15 schools right now. I mean, even if 4 or 5 get poached, they'll have enough to have a league, and they could go on the offensive there too and try to poach the American. I mean, they could take that route at that point, but it's just not going to be the best. The best case scenario for that league is to keep some of these schools. How do you keep Florida State? I don't think you're going to keep anybody that wants that the other leagues want. So like, for everybody else, how do you keep them? Or maybe there is a world where if you get very creative now, you can keep them away from the Big 10 and the SEC. If you can give them a more attractive and incentive or a better financial incentive to stay. And I think you can have conversations right now or not. I mean, maybe not like today, but if the economy settles and goes up and these networks are less squeamish and skittish, and all of a sudden ESPN's partners with both the Big 12 and the ACC already, and Fox is with the Big 12. And maybe you get everybody back to the table and say, hey, look, guys, here's what we think we need to do. And here's how this is going to work. We're going to give you a basketball brand on the men's and women's side that you can make a lot of money of when there ain't anything else happening, right? Football's football. Well, let's deal with football. We all like the 35, million. Maybe we get it to 40, whatever it is that everybody's already making. But let's bring this basketball league to the table and get everybody else an extra 10, an extra 15, because we think that you'll have a coast-to-coast basketball league that, again, I've said this for a long time, would be the second best brand of basketball on the planet. And we know there is an appetite for basketball all across the world, even more than there is in football, right? Like other parts of the world love basketball. We're kind of on an island with football. There's something there, and we've seen, you and I have seen, you've sent me some stuff of like very low key conversations of like of reports, not from the traditional places that those conversations might be happening. But I think we're seeing, if there's interest in Cal and Stanford, there has to be interest in something like that.
We've talked for a long time about how good of a basketball conference, number one, the Big 12 already is, but number two, how much better it could be. I mean, the fact that they even brought in Arizona, and before that, they brought in Houston, Cincinnati, who's been good historically. They've got the chance here, the Big 12 does, from a basketball product perspective. I mean, can you imagine if they had Duke and Syracuse and, some of these other legendary ACC schools joining the Big 12? I mean, man, like you're talking about basically a coast-to-coast power basketball conference that, I think you were the one that made the point a while back, like outside of the NBA, would there be a better league for basketball in the country? No, I don't think there would be.
I don't think there's going to be, even just with the Big 12 right now and what's happening in the Big 12. But if you put that with the ACC, get out of here with that. I mean, you'd have games all day, every day. Like you start at 6 o'clock and you go through the 9 o'clock window, Monday through Sunday, like every single day you could have. I mean, it would be amazing. 869-1240 is the number to call. Congratulations to Shannon, who's headed to Thomas Rhett on us. Let's do our final giveaway to the day here on the way out, and it is for Blue Beetle, a movie, a DC superhero movie coming to Boulevard Theaters in Wichita. You can check it out a day early, giving away a pair of tickets right now for a special screening. Actually, Jad, let's that could move up to a 4-pack if you need them, because we've got to get these out here before that sneak peek on Thursday. So either 2 or 4 tickets, whatever you need, to Boulevard Theaters at Town West to get a sneak peek of the Blue Beetle movie. We'll do that. First caller, 869-1240 during the break. Jad will get us a winner. We'll come back with a really uncomfortable story in Major League Baseball developing around one of the young stars. I don't really want to talk about it, but man, it's the big headline today. We'll hit that next on Sports Daily.
Dude, you gotta hear this.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
Congratulations, Alex, for winning our final giveaway, Blue Beetle tickets. Chris also won because Jad's feeling it. So Alex and Chris, always opportunities to win great prizes here on Sports Daily. Tommy, there's a story developing that is no bueno here, not good. So Wander Franco, apparently the Rays' young shortstop, who signed an 11-year extension, was once the number one prospect in baseball, all of these things, I guess on social media was accused of having a relationship with an underage girl. Now, that's an accusation in, I think, tweets that have been deleted or posts somewhere that have been deleted, but he's not with the team and they're looking into it and acknowledging that they know about this. I don't know how serious this is as far as like credibility on what was said, but clearly it's uncomfortable right now to the point with the Rays, and we've got a really strange story developing. I don't remember ever seeing one like this, by the way, and I don't know what the protocol on this is, but I think we can read between the lines and say this is serious because he's not with the team and the Rays are acknowledging that it exists.
Yeah, he did not play yesterday in their series finale against Cleveland, was in the dugout for part of the game and then left midway through the game. And the Rays are traveling to San Francisco to take on the Giants. He did not travel with them on the team plane. He's not officially suspended. He's not on any kind of restricted list or administrative leave list or whatever, Major League Baseball has, but he did not travel with the team. And so as far as I know, I mean, I've been looking at different articles about this. Nobody is reporting like the actual thing.
I know,
right?
It's been the most confusing thing. Like all that anybody's reporting is that something was out there, and
yeah,
but you can.
Jeff Passan from ESPN, he is not saying anything. I mean, some of these other reporters are like they're just saying that it's social media posts, but not really like I don't know, elaborating on it. So I mean, I don't know like how responsible it is like to bring up what like is being accused like on social media.
I don't
but
either.
if there is like legitimacy with this, I mean, it's a bad deal.
It's a strange one, and it's one of the young stars of baseball. So not something I want to spend a whole lot of time with because it's uncomfortable and it is so like early and not it's just we don't have a lot of information.
Yeah.
So we'll just let you speculate all you want and go see like what's out there and you can handle. But the story's there and it has become the biggest story probably of the day. So we definitely wanted to acknowledge it. Yikes. We'll see. All right, let's go back to the NFL preseason here, Tommy. Sports Daily on a Monday, a reaction Monday with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor. What do you think of the Broncos? What do you think of Sean Payton, Russ Wilson's, debut there? Is there anything to make of it? I think that the spotlight's a little bigger because of last year than it probably should be really early on in the preseason. Russ took some shots in that game. That's not a good sign. I think the general feel is that line should be pretty good, but he took some shots in that game. How interested are you in the Broncos? It's what's crazy about it is remember to this time last year, Tommy, and all the hype with the team. I think everybody just assumes they're not going to be that good, but there is a possibility that it was coaching. Sean Payton gets in there and this becomes a playoff contending team. I mean, I think that's in the realm of possibility for sure. But how much are we paying attention to them in the preseason to try and determine if that is indeed the case?
I think I want to see more, obviously. And Russ didn't have a lot of time to throw, especially in the first quarter. I mean, the offensive line didn't protect him very well, at least early on in the game. I don't know if that was just the offensive line shaking off some rust and, Wilson just trying to figure out his way through. I thought he looked okay, though, for the most part. He played most of the first half, threw a touchdown pass. Jerry Jeudy, when you've got a weapon like that. I mean, that's what was so surprising to me last season with Russell Wilson, was that he's got talent out wide receiver around him and he wasn't able to make it work. So Jerry Jeudy, I think, is going to be clearly he's the number one receiver for Russell Wilson going into this season. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So it was nice to see that they connected a couple times. I don't know. I mean, I think the jury is still out. I'm not ready to say at all that I think Russell Wilson will come back and be successful with the Broncos, but I do think that when you've got somebody like Sean Payton, I mean, it was such a disaster last year. I can't imagine it gets any worse.
So I think they have a chance to be good. I don't know. I'm not going to say that I think they will be yet. I need to see the preseason, but I think there's a chance that they are. Like that there's a chance they're the second best team in that division. I would still on what are we, August 14th, I'd still take the Chargers at this point. But Denver was considered a complete team with a great defense, and Javonte Williams is back, and they invested money on the offensive line, and Sean Payton comes in. I don't know that it's the best thing in the world to sleep on them, as depending on Russ. Like, let's say Russ is just better, right? And closer to what he was at the end of the year. That's not a bad situation. The offense was bad last year. They never scored any points. But they averaged like 16 points a game. It was crazy. Another team that I think has gone under the radar and is almost certainly going to be one of my favorite futures betting teams, the Minnesota Vikings. Tell me, Tommy, why a team that was able, and I don't care how they did it in the NFL, they won 14 games last year, added Jordan Addison, right? Brought in Brian Flores, one of the great minds defensively in football. I think there's a chance with a full year of Hawkinson too that they're better offensively and better defensively, almost certainly, because I don't know how much worse they can get defensively. Why? Like, they're not even the favorite to win their own division. Detroit is, and their win total bet right now, Tommy, is like 8.5 on BetMGM. Like, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bettors see that, without Dalvin Cook, that they've lost a key cog in that offense.
Dalvin Cook
was going to be up to
Alexander last year.
It's going to be up to Alexander Madison, though, to see if he can take that running game to the next level. And, he's been the primary backup the last couple of seasons. It's his job now. They're relatively thin behind him. There's not a lot of experience behind him. I know Kareem Hunt went and visited the Vikings. I mean, he's going on a tour and, visiting the Saints and the Colts and whatever. But they want to find some depth behind Madison. But, man, they've got so much talent at wide receiver. I mean, with Jordan Addison, of course, Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen's no longer there, but he was getting a little long in the tooth. So I don't know. I mean, I think
Hawkinson,
that
Osborne's still there.
For sure. 100%.
Now, the line, if you watch the Netflix documentary, the line was bad. But it's a high pedigree line. But, man, Cousins got killed last year.
Yep.
I'm not that worried about Dalvin Cook because I think they might sling it just like all the time. And Madison has filled in spurts. And Ty Chandler, the young player, has looked pretty good. I think people are sleeping on them. I'm not saying I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, anything like that. But I'm a Brian Flores guy, especially as a defensive coach. I think they get better defensively, one way or the other. I think they have a chance to be one of the top offenses in the NFC. I'm just like the Lions. Yeah, they got a little bit better maybe, but they don't have Jamison Williams for 6 games, right? They traded away DeAndre Swift. Like they're probably a little bit better. I think the Bears are certainly better, but better than the worst team in football. And the Packers might be, right? The Packers had a lot of bad luck last year too. I just like 8.5 wins, and I think you can get them like 2.5 to 1 to win the division. I kind of like the Vikings. And I mean, everybody's out on the Vikings. I feel like I'm on an island here with the Vikings, but I'm in on the Vikings.
They've got a tremendous amount of young talent catching the football. And the one thing Kirk Cousins does is he hangs in the pocket and he does get hit a lot, but he's consistent. He doesn't do a lot of flashy things, but he does all the right things for the most part when he needs to. And I mean, come on, like if all you have to do is throw the ball up to Justin Jefferson and let him go get it. I mean, come on, like he's the best receiver in the NFL for a reason. And then, oh, by the way, Jordan Addison is there now too. So I don't think you're alone on an island. I liked them last year to win the entire NFC. Didn't happen, but I liked them to do that.
Games.
So I'm in on them. I picked them to win that division and the conference at the beginning of last year. They might take a small step back. But man, I still think that we're looking at a, I don't know, 11, 12 win season for them. I would hammer the over on that big time.
They only need 9. They only need to be above 500. And I got to go look at their schedule, but
I don't know why, like, what has happened, what has transpired to think that they're going to take that big of a step back. Is it, and honestly, I just bring up that question. Is it the absence of Dalvin Cook? Is that part of it?
No, I think it's regression baked in because they had that weird point differential and they won so many crazy close games, and that's a part of it. But to get 5 games worse, no, they'd have to get 6 games worse to not hit that over. They can get 5 games worse and hit that over with basically the same team featuring one of the great coordinators or defensive coaches in football and a rookie receiver that feels like he's going to be a really nice fit there. I don't get it. That's going to be one of my favorite, and we'll get into that as we make our way through. We'll spend a lot of time with some of our favorite, futures bets of the NFL, and we'll pick division winners and do all that. But that stood out to me as I just feel like there's no buzz on the Vikings, and I don't understand why. And, even when I think about all the teams in the division get better, they're not going to win as many close games as they did a year ago. I still think it's hard to imagine them not being above 500. 869-1240 IHOP hotline. Might have time to squeeze in another call. We'll come back. We'll get you our last full segment here on the show today. Sports Daily rolling along on a Monday. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. We've been talking a lot about the preseason games over the weekend. Deuce Vaughn's trending still, Tommy. I mean, if you didn't see Deuce Vaughn's performance in the preseason, you got to go watch some of those runs, man. Like, it looks like he's at K-State. I mean, he's just wiggly. He's making his way through. And once we got into game action, like, I know he's looked undersized in camp. He didn't look that undersized to me once we got into the actual preseason game. Tommy, he looked just like Deuce Vaughn's always looked.
Hasn't that been kind of his calling card, though, too, is, the fact that he can be elusive and, because he is small, can slip through tackles. And I know that, like, when he got drafted by the Cowboys, a lot of the conversation was, hey, maybe he can hide behind the linemen, and make it more difficult for defenses to find him. And so I think that we saw some of that in the week 1 preseason game with the Cowboys. And that's going to be, I think, a benefit to him. And it's very easy to take a look at his size or lack thereof and consider it a negative or a detriment. I'm not sure that it actually is.
I don't think it is either. I think he can use it to his advantage. He's elusive, man. And yeah, when it's even more amplified now when everybody around him is so large, and then he just squirts through, right? He's just there. Very cool. Very, 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 very cool to see it. Love it. And it's going to be one of our favorite things to watch this preseason in general. Don't you think, Tommy? Like, as we're looking for storylines in the preseason, I think the Chiefs will settle in, and by the end of it, there won't be a whole lot of questions, because what are the questions, right? The offensive line. It's very clear now how they're going to stack up that offensive line to start the year. Like, I think we don't need to see anything else there. How do the receivers stack up? The same way we've thought they were going to stack up. MVS and Sky Moore out there, Tony when he's back, and then the rest of the guys will rotate in. Like, those questions that we want to see, I think through camp and now we're starting to get those answers. So for us around here, it's like, man, what's Deuce Vaughn going to do? Like, I can't wait to watch the Cowboys this preseason so we can see Deuce Vaughn, or I can't wait to get the Deuce Vaughn highlight videos now, because I'm telling you, this thing's going to snowball, Tommy. Like, everybody now is like, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't have been making so much fun, and maybe the Cowboys aren't crazy. Let's just,
yeah.
And then and then the next game, if he has more good care, someone's like, for real, is Deuce Vaughn going to be a thing? And then by the end of it, it's going to be so much fun to watch, because he's going to keep finding success. Like, he's a great player.
And I think that it's pretty likely that he's going to end up making the roster for the Cowboys and being an impact player. But let's just say, on the off chance he doesn't, and they make a massive mistake and he doesn't make the active roster, there are going to be a bunch of teams out there that would want to use him in a variety of ways. He's going to, like, I'm not concerned about that, but let's just say, like, a terrible thing happens and he doesn't. I mean, he'll find a place for sure, just because of that elusiveness.
Think about, too, like, you've got Bijan Robinson and where he was drafted, Breece Hall, who we love, obviously, and where he was drafted. Those are both incredible players, by the way. Deuce Vaughn had he was as good in college as either one of those guys, right? That's the reality. He was as productive as either one of those guys. And those were two insanely productive and two of the best college running backs we've seen over the last couple of years. And Deuce Vaughn was right there with him. And you're starting, everyone now, it's like 50-50. People are either still like, yeah, but he's smaller. Like, what did the Cowboys just get that late in the draft? Because this dude, when you saw it in game action, it's like, oh, that's why. Like, I didn't realize he was that fast. Oh, how does he keep sneaking through the line like that? Oh, he's that kind of receiver. Whereas if you watch him every week, like, he can do everything. It's just, can he hold up in the NFL? But that's a question for everybody. Even the big dudes get banged up. So, it's probably unfair, but man, I'm here for it.
And I wonder too, like, how much can the Cowboys utilize him in pass catching roles?
Lot.
I mean, I think he had 3 catches for like 6 yards in the preseason game. It wasn't anything spectacular, but they did use him. Like, they used him several different times out of the backfield. And, he did that quite a bit at K-State. So if he can be multifaceted, kind of that Swiss Army knife for the Cowboys offensively, he's going to find himself with a significant amount of value.
K-State fans can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm fairly certain he's lined up in the slot before in that offense at K-State. I do think he can gadget his way through to touches early. And I also think Tony Pollard is not going to be a bell cow running back. It does not seem like that has ever been a part of his DNA to me. We'll come back. We'll wrap up Sports Daily. Congratulations to all our winners. We'll tell you what's on tap on the network today when we return for our final segment. We'll be right back.
Brought to you by IHOP, celebrating their 65th anniversary with $5 all-you-can-eat pancakes.
Toppers Plus Truck Accessories has moved to a new location.
That's it, everybody. Jake Albracht, Tommy Castor here with you. We'll do it again tomorrow. Coming up, following us, Jim Rome, and I believe Rome is back today. Bob and Jeff from 2 to 4. CBS Sports Radio programming until 7 when the Royals get ready to take on the red-hot Seattle Mariners. So we'll see how that goes for the Royals. Get in a little bit. Cole Reagan's not quite as sharp over the weekend, but maybe some Royals talk later this week. Congratulations to all our giveaways, to Thomas Rhett, to the Wichita Wind Surge, to HTO, to Blue Beetle. Tommy, let's do it again tomorrow.
See you back here on Tuesday.
We'll get some more honest reaction from the Chiefs today, by the way, to that preseason game, probably than we did in the post game. We'll have that for you tomorrow. See you then.